Welcome, welcome, welcome to Let's Talk Real Estate. Hi, my name is Dexter B. Jenkins, and welcome to our show. We are here in Canton, Massachusetts, and we meet once a month because to talk about this important one question really we answer is how to use real estate as a wealth creation tool. And so every month what we do is we get together, a handful of us here, but then we have a great audience out there who are watching all over. Now we have people watching from Detroit and then Michigan, and Detroit's in Michigan, excuse me, Maryland and Connecticut. And so welcome all of you. And so as I said, the goal is always to really look at this thing of how are we able to use real estate as a wealth creation tool. And so every month what we do is we bring in a financial expert from throughout New England to talk about how to do that. And so this month is no different. But before we get started, this show is being sponsored by my book that I wrote. It was released in January. It was the #1 bestseller as far as real estate and sales on Amazon. And then it actually came out physically in April when we had our Real Estate Wealth Creation Summit. And so the book the show's been sponsored by that. If you desire to have a copy of that, they'll put up some sort of QR code or whatever later on for that. So without further ado, what I want to do is introduce you to someone who Luke and I met, probably pre-COVID. I would think pre-COVID at a RIA, which I always tell you guys to go to RIAs, right? And so he and I hit it off. And so at that time, he was with another company. Now he's with H1, H2 Capital. And so he is a money guy. So if you need some money, Luke is your man. So without further ado, welcome to the Let's Talk Real Estate, Luke Hanscom.
Thanks, Dex.
What's up, Luke? Good to see you, man.
How you doing?
Now, Luke, and I said he and I met back in. He was on our third show that we did back in 2023. So I went back and looked. I said, wow. And he was with another firm at that time, Fix and Flip, Fund That Flip, with the company that he was with at the time. Right now, he's with H1, H2 Capital. Since then, he's had a child, so he's a new dad. Yeah. And so a lot of stuff had happened since we last saw Luke. So Luke, I'm telling them a little bit about yourself. Look into that camera and tell them who you are, a little bit about yourself, your mama name and all that.
Oh man, Luke Hanscom, son of Helen and Bob. One of the three partners at H1, H2. We do private money lending, hard money lending on investment real estate projects, mostly in New England, a couple other states, mostly with folks that we know from New England that might be working in some other markets. But we like to know the people that we work with, shake their hands and really understand what makes them tick, what they like for their properties, and how we can all work together as part of our game plan. So yeah, we've been at it now H1H2, I think just over 2 years
of
doing our own first position mortgages. Prior to that, we did a bunch of equity stuff. We've been involved in every kind of piece of the real estate puzzle you can think of at this point, and this is where we've really steadied the ship. As you know, the previous fund I was at, Fund That Flip, that was all first position mortgages. That was my day job. H1H2 was already going on during that as an equity equity investing group, and we're doing some different partnership deals and so on. And then we really kind of turned the page into making H1H2 the New England-based flagship program for the first position mortgages that I was working on at a different firm I was an early employee at, and that company got really, really big, and there's only so much loop to go around.
So much loop to go around. Exactly. So question. So talk about, because I'm always this my question I first always ask is, how did you get involved in real estate?
Yeah, I guess it comes down to how small you want to boil it down to. I started out selling windows.
That's small.
For Pella Windows at homeowner sales just out of school. Up in southern New Hampshire. Was living in my parents' house. Shout out Bob and Helen. Driving from house to house from 8 in the morning to 6 o'clock at night was like the last time you'd go sit down and meet with somebody. So you're meeting with folks after they've had dinner and then trying to sell them on why they should spend $2,000 a window to getting thrown out of their house, and trying your luck the next day. So that was the first kind of dip into any like home improvement type of real estate stuff. But it all starts to connect pretty fast.
Right. So you started there, and then so how did you transition into like the money side of things?
Yeah, so doubled down in the window space, but got away from some of the homeowner stuff and went more into the commercial sales and working with builders and developers and getting to know architects locally and starting to get a little bit more ingrained in the community of investors, not so much homeowners, and learning how that process worked a little bit. Opened up a couple of different opportunities as I was progressing in that career. And, to be frank with you, I was the youngest guy at the last window company that I was working at, probably by like 40 years.
Right.
I was bored. It's like, man, like this company's
this
planning on selling. It was great, but I hit the peak of selling windows. I couldn't get promoted again. There was no more. The window sales industry isn't a super, corporate ladder type of business. You either get to the point where you're selling the highest volume of windows, and great, you make money off your sales, and that's awesome, but you're never going to go own the window company. And that's what I figured out. So I'm never going to own the window company. I'm making this company all this money selling the product. I'd love to be involved in a business that I can own a piece of. And that entered Fund That Flip, was a small startup company that was looking for somebody to come in and be a hardworking salesman, and they were willing to give up equity in the business in order to do that. So that was my first step into working for partially something that I owned a piece of. And that's addicting. When you work long days, you have a lot going on your plate, and you're toughing it out. When you know at the end of the day you're doing it for yourself, which is one of the most I think admirable things about the people that we lend money to and the folks that we work with, is that everybody who is flipping these houses and building these projects, like end of the day, they're their boss. Of course. And that's the coolest thing about this industry, is you're around all these other people who have said, no, like, I'm betting on me and I'm going to win. And that's the most exciting. So that became a little bit bigger of a bet with H1H2, right? Not just some options or some potential shares of a company that really wasn't mine, versus to now that's a different show as being a true partner in the business and directing the lending business and being the judge, jury, and executioner, for lack of better explanation, on our loan product. Now I'm the decision maker when it comes to what we're doing, versus somebody who was just making a suggestion. So it's been a really cool journey to get to this spot, and I'm happy to be here and talking about it.
In other words, Luke's saying he the man, but y'all heard how he talk around there, right? Well, he did say he's the judge, jury, and executioner, so that means it stops with him. So he's definitely somebody to know. So just so Luke, so you know, and then all you guys know, you guys out, and I'm off this camera off, that you're looking at. One of the things we would talk about is that we do everything off the FFM formula, right? How do we find deals? How do we fund deals? And then monetize, so finding deals, we've talked a lot about that. I think last month, I did this. Did I do a session last month? I think it was me. We talked about how to talk to realtors, so on and so forth. And then this month, we're talking about the funding of the deals. And so, Luke, talk to us about, as I'm an investor, maybe I'm brand spanking new. Talk to me about some of the options that maybe H1, H2 would have, or let's take a step back from that. Let's talk about hard money and private lending in general. Where does that fall in as far as investors are concerned?
Sure. So the hard money or private money category in lending is basically a non-bank lender, and they exist in a couple of different formats. You might have Jerry at the pizza shop who's writing you a check for the project, and that guy might have the reputation of the bad hard money guy who's going to break your ankles if you don't pay him back. And there's a stigma around hard money with that name to it. It's really not what it is.
Right.
It's really just hard money is based off the hard asset of what you're buying.
Right.
But that's followed it, and it still really hasn't gone away. So a lot of lending shops have transitioned into calling themselves private money lenders or private capital, which to me is really like Jerry, who might be your cousin or who's writing you a check and saying, hey man, I want to privately invest in your project. So this kind of like nomenclature or lexical choice changes of some of that, but that's the industry now that most of the folks that you'll talk to or see out in market that are offering a hard money product will identify as a private money lender.
Okay.
And they're providing a first mortgage on the asset that you're buying, usually at a bigger loan amount than what the bank would offer you. So smaller down payment for the investor, a little bit riskier of a loan for the lender, so the price point's a little bit higher than what the bank would be. So a couple different costs associated typically with a hard money loan, but generally easier to access, less red tape, typically no tax returns, formal bank statements. They're not asking for, where have you been working the last 3 years? What have you been up to? Hey, do we like the property that you're buying? Do we think you're going to make money on it after you've done, your renovations to it? And that's the primary evaluation.
Exactly. And well, Lucas said a whole bunch. You could tell he's used to doing this.
Slow me down. Slow me down anytime.
And because I think that is one of the biggest things I'm talking to, particularly newer investors, because we're used to a traditional lending thing where you go to, just say Santander, it takes 45 to 60 days to get approved, and they ask for everything, including your left arm and your mama name and firstborn and tax returns and all that stuff, and then you come onto this investor side. So whether you're talking about hard money or private lending, whatever term you name it, it is a fundamental mind shift that I have a lot of people have a hard time grabbing. So I'm thinking about a couple that I was dealing with, and we'll talk terms in a second. And you did throw something out. And she was like, Dexter, why would I pay all of this? And I'm just like, well, if you're looking at deals like we are, they move fast. So you don't have 45 to 60 days to put an offer in and then get financing and all of that. And so what someone like you guys do is you offer a valuable service because you give us speed, and then you give us convenience, and then you're in many respects you're betting on us to get the job done. And so it really does become something where you want to get into a relationship with somebody like Luke, because he's going to walk, because I know you go out there and walk a whole bunch of sites and all that, because you want to make sure that your money's being deployed in the right places. So not only is he going to give you money, but he's also has some eyes that, because you see what has worked and what hasn't worked, and then you're also another way. And so it's a great way to vet deals is by having a lender such as yourself.
Yeah, and we do that, go onto the job sites and look at it, to make sure that things are going well, but also because we care about the people that are doing the work, we care about the projects, we care about their success at the end.
Correct.
I've been in and out of a couple thousand houses, with no exaggeration, in my career, from window sales and homeowner kitchen projects to giant apartment buildings that we've done to subdivisions, you name it, every type of asset that you can build with our type of loan. I've been in and out of a ton of them.
Exactly.
And I've seen little things that guys do really, really good.
Right.
I've seen things that guys do bad. Hey, your plumber didn't do this? Hey, you call him. I'm not going to step on your toes. I'm not telling you how to build your thing. But if I catch something, I'll casually mention something to you that maybe that makes a difference for you.
Because you become a partner. I mean, obviously financially, but I think just on your wealth of experience. I mean, what I like to have people come through and talk to our crowd, our audiences, is really to have someone who's done a number of different things. And so now you've done the window thing, and so you could talk to that, and then you've talked to the lending side, which you're doing now. And so, it really allows you to be sort of a multi-purpose. I'm trying to think of a basketball player right now who could do a number of things. Jason Tatum could do a bunch of things. Jason Tatum, he ain't gonna play for a while, so he's gonna be out. Just say Jaylen Brown, who can shoot the three, go to the hole, and all that. And so that's the type of person that you're really looking for to be in business with. So you call somebody like Luke. Now Luke wants to talk to you when.
Well, it depends on when we're having our first conversation. Okay. So if it's the first time I'm ever talking to you, the earlier the better. So I can help you avoid some stuff in the process that either will tell you, don't call me until this point, or let me get involved before you go down a path that you're going to be totally lost on if you think you're going one way and you're not. So if you've never worked with hard money before, you know that you're going to go buy something, and let's say the next 3 months, you're committed. You're hunting for that deal. You've got your down payment money ready. You're looking for that project.
Right.
That's a great time to engage with me or any other lender that you might be talking to. Say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Am I on the right path here? This is what I have prepared for a down payment. This is what I think it's going to take me to do. For the length of a project, I'm looking for something that I'm in and out of maybe it's 3 months or maybe it's 18 months. Maybe you think you need 3 years. That's good information for us to know early, so I can guide you and say, hey, if you're going to call me when you do have that property under contract, which is where the person with a little bit more experience generally brings me into the picture. It says, hey, I just got my offer accepted. What can we do here? Or can we do the same as last time? Or what can I expect? If they have a general idea prior to putting that offer out, they already know pretty much what they're going to get. If you don't, ask early so we can tell you and get you set up. And the other thing that we do for folks too, certainly before that offer exception happens, is we'll provide proof of funds letters if we've been able to vet out and make sure that you are indeed somebody that we would do a loan with. We can say, okay, yeah, we'll help you get your offer accepted. We'll include a letter when you go put your offer out there. It says, hey, yeah, we're good, Dexter. We're going to fund your deal. Dexter's approved up to $1 million to go, buy that 2-family in Somerville, whatever you might be looking for.
It could be because I think a lot of times what people don't do is that they don't contact their money person early. So I've always talked to you guys about having multiple money relationships and having these conversations with a Luke and whoever else that you may have these conversations, and you start looking at, hey, look, I'm out here, I want to buy my first multifamily, I want to buy my first flip. Now I'm talking to a Luke. Now he did say something else, which I thought was interesting too, is sometimes if you're more experienced, he doesn't want to talk to you. Oh, not want to talk to you because he and I have talked. We've done business at all. But you're looking at after it's under contract, which is a whole. So it's a different way. It's a different mentality of the hardest. I think one of the hardest things for me to grab when I first started doing this was, you want me to get under contract and then bring it to you? It really was sort of playing my mind a little bit. And then after I got around, other people say, yeah, that's just how they do this. And so it really becomes just based off of the person, and because everybody's an individual, and what you have to do is go person by person. Della may be different from Vanessa and so on and so forth. So very interesting stuff. So they also do proof of fund letters. So when you go on because you guys know that when you put an offer in, most of them, matter of fact, most of them don't accept them unless you sort of have some sort of proof of funds, And so it's very important that you have someone like Luke in your corner early on, because they can get and all agents I know is like, they think like this: if you don't have a POF, they ain't taking you seriously.
Yeah, that or they're going to tell you, are you buying cash? Let's see the bank account.
Yeah, exactly.
Show me the checking account with $300,000 in it or whatever it is.
They're not. So so you almost need to have I'm thinking to have a conversation with you, like you said, very early, and then begin to talk about these are some of the things that I'm looking at doing. And so now that I've found a property, now I'm putting the offer in. Now we can begin to get on the other side of what we need to do.
Yeah, and that's where I think we really can come in with that information. So before you're putting something under contract, what your lending parameters are going to be. So if you're going to go put an offer in on 123 Main Street, and that's a property that I told you, hey, okay, I'd do a 10% down loan on that. No problem. I got you on that one. Or I might say, hey, if you're trying to do something really complicated and there's a ton of renovation going into your first deal, I might want you to bring 25% down. So now okay, if I'm looking at this and I'm doing a kitchen and bath and slapping some paint on, I'm 10% down. Hey, if I'm taking the roof off and I'm putting a big addition off the back and I'm going to take, a whole year and do this crazy intense project, I should
25.
plan to bring a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah, example based in that, but that's, if you have that information going into it, then you don't find yourself with an accepted offer on a deal you can't close.
Can't close on.
Which is the scenario you're trying to avoid.
Yeah,
Then you
exactly.
turn into a wholesaler and you're trying to find somebody else to buy out. And there's nothing wrong with wholesaling, by the way. That's not a jab, but if that wasn't your intention.
You're planning on flipping it.
Yeah, if that's not your intention. That's not a spot you want to be in.
Yeah.
I've done that. I'm in a situation similar to that right now, on a
Okay.
deal that I don't want to do because it's it's just more work than I thought we were going to have to be involved in. So no thanks.
It happens.
It's just a deal I'm an investor on, but it's still something. Yeah. Why don't we just make sure somebody else picks this one up? And, we'll let somebody else win on that one.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. But
So question. So you mentioned any questions out here in the audience? Not yet. So you got a good sense of what Luke does, where you call him in at, those type of things. So you mentioned types of money that people have to bring to the table. So what's typically what somebody would have to bring to the table? So say I'm doing a $500,000 flip and just say Milton, which probably you don't get nothing past me, but we'll just say Milton.
Sure.
What type of money would somebody have to bring? So someone who's experienced, talk a little bit about that, and then someone who's maybe on the newer side, what would they have to bring to the table?
Yeah. So the way that we qualify the leverage point, so your down payment number for somebody who's experienced, is going to be based off of the complexity of the project.
Okay.
So
stop right there. Number one is what class?
Complexity.
How difficult is the project? Complexity. All right, keep going, Luke.
So your true fix and flip, you're staying inside of the walls, right?
Okay.
You're going in, you're not tearing anything down.
Okay.
It might be a big renovation. It might even be a $500,000 renovation. But if the house justifies that it's a 3,000 square foot home, you're putting in nice appliances, you're doing whatever, like you're going soup to nuts on a full gut. If you have top experience, let's say 10 or more in the last 3 years of similar size renovations, or maybe a little bit smaller that you've been building up to that number for, I'm okay with that too.
Okay.
10% down, 100% of the construction in the loan, up to 70% of the ARV number, so what you think you're going to sell it for when you're done. So that's your maximum leverage loan in industry, really, across the market.
Exactly, something across the board. That sort of
So we pull that a step back if we add an additional complexity to it. So let's say that's a complexity 0. A complexity 1 for me would be you're taking the roof off.
Okay.
You're throwing a big addition on that's, let's say it's more than 20% of the existing square footage. So you got a 1,000 square foot house and you're putting a 500 square foot addition on, that's half the existing size.
Okay.
That's a big project.
Okay.
So we're going to put that into that next category.
That next level.
Or you're doing a condo conversion. You're saying, hey, I'm buying a triple decker, it's 3 apartments now, and I'm going to transfer them into condos afterwards and sell them out. Okay, now you're in the 15% down category.
Okay. So we got 10, 15, and 20. Those are 3 he mentioned, right? So you got 10% down.
I didn't give you 20.
You said 20? You said 25?
No, I didn't say. I didn't only give you those 2.
Where I get 25
You can bring
from?
25 if you want.
Anyway,
You got a
10,
deal, you want to
15?
bring me
I think it's
25?
All right. I'm thinking 25. All right. So we got 10 and 15. I'm sorry. so 10 is if it's stay within the sort of the walls of what we're talking about doing, not too much. 15 for condo conversions. Did I hear that right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, keep going. And now what's the next level?
Yeah, so those
Since
are,
it ain't 25, so like I said, what is it?
those are your 2 main thresholds for fix and flip.
Okay.
Now where it gets, where we'll start to change is, let's say you're on the lower end of the experience, I don't know, window there, and you're trying to get into that heavier renovation project with the addition. But I've only done 1 fix and flip, and it was a 20 grand reno, and now I want to do this $400,000.
That's a big jump, yeah.
So, okay, let's start qualifying out what else we can think of that you might bring to the table. So maybe you've got a GC license, or maybe you're a licensed electrician, or maybe you've been a partner on other projects, or you have some other, what we call them in the industry, compensating factors. Something else that's not exactly, hey, I bought and sold this thing, but I've been involved. I'm not totally green to this type of project. So we start vetting out some of that stuff.
Okay.
Then we might say, hey, how's your credit?
Right.
Is your credit really strong? You have a great history of paying back debt. Does that give me a little bit more confidence that you're going to come in and deliver? Absolutely. So we start putting that stuff in to the mix. And maybe if you're on, you have a little bit of that, maybe we put you to 20.
Okay.
If you have none of it, maybe it's 25.
Okay.
And
There's the 25. I know 25 was coming.
That stuff is all discretionary, right?
Exactly.
So that becomes the comfort level of myself and our, my colleagues, where we look at it and say, okay, hey, do we feel good about having a little bit more of a gap if something doesn't go right on this project? That's what the down payment serves to do. It protects the front end of the loan for the lender. So if you get stuck halfway through the project because you couldn't handle it, I didn't lend you too much in the front of that project to where I can't go sell it and make my money back.
Got it.
So after all the costs it takes to go and do those processes, which nobody wants to do, you have to have a cushion. Otherwise, you know, if I had lent you 90% on that $500,000 reno, you went and did the first 200 of it, and the house hasn't caught over the curve of the value. Now I'm over my skis, and I'm going to lose money if that doesn't end. That's what we're protecting against.
Right.
So yeah, that's your
but I think that is a what you're teaching us is a fundamental lesson of how a lender thinks, because I think a lot of times we don't understand that, and so you're like, well, this guy said 10%, this guy said, or whatever it is, and I'm like, you know, there is a risk that you're taking, and there's certain things that you have to do in order to make sure that you guys don't lose your cert and make sure you stay in business long term.
Absolutely. And I think the best way to do that is when you're evaluating your deals, evaluate them for net profit. So what I mean by that is don't look at your project, and I had a conversation with a young man this afternoon, looking at his first deal. He wants to build a new construction home. And he's
First build.
Okay. Out in the, I was going to say Midwest. It's not the Midwest, North Carolina.
Okay.
Friend of an existing client of mine, great guy. This guy's coming up into the space. He's been working, in the field. Now he wants to go do something on his own. And you can buy land in North Carolina for $35,000.
Okay. And
then he's got a build budget of $265,000. So if we're doing quick math, it's $300 grand total cost.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I'm buying this thing, for $300 all in, with my purchase and my construction, and I'm going to sell it for $400,000.
That's tight.
So I said, ooh.
That's tight.
Well, what are you forgetting, man?
Yeah,
well, what do you mean?
No.
So you're going to sell that thing for $400 grand. So what right out of the gate, how much you lose? And he goes, what are you talking about? You're going to pay your realtor, right?
Yeah.
You're going to pay your realtor
That's
2.5.
tight.
You're probably going to pay the buyer's realtor 2.5. So there's 20 grand out the door. Boom, there you go. What else you got in there? You got your costs for your loan, your interest carry, you get your insurance, your title. You're going to pay your attorney to close the loan. You got all these things that add up. When you have such a tight margin, your $100,000 of profit turns into 15 or 20.
Luke is giving y'all some serious game, I'm telling you.
Then your deal's no good. So if you call your lender and say, oh, well, what do you mean? Like, I'll bring more money, I'll make it happen. Don't worry. Hey man, no, we don't want to see you fail. I don't want to see you go through a project and then make 10 grand, because if you get to that point, you're giving up. You're looking down the barrel of making $10,000 after working for a year.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody in this room that would be okay with saying, hey, I'll work my tail off, because it's not easy work.
No, it ain't.
I'm going to work my tail off and then come home to a check for 10 grand. That, by the way, you get at the end.
Right.
You don't get the 10 first.
Right.
And then get the I'll see you later.
Yeah.
That stinks. So we don't want to see people go through that experience. So we'll catch some of that stuff. Say, well, hold on, man. Like, wait. And we had a 45-minute conversation, and at the end of that conversation, he's starting to put two and two together, and he goes, oh, yeah, I think somebody from his work's family member was trying to sell a house, and he's like, yeah, I think my boss was going to try to buy it, but they wanted a number that was too high, and we started figuring out all these different things. That's your first deal right there. They want a number that's too much for the house. You know that you can go in and renovate it for a decent amount. I think he said like $25,000, $30,000 to renovate, which I said, that's perfect.
Exactly.
That's a great number. Go in and do that. Buy it for $200, renovate it for $30 grand. I'll give you 10% down loan on that.
Sweet.
All day.
Right.
No problem.
Right.
Easy. That renovation budget's 20% or less of what you're buying the house for.
Exactly.
I'm going to consider that a basic fix and flip. Done deal. 10% down. We'll go on that loan. So that was where we were starting to have that conversation, but where it got interesting. And this is the cool stuff you get at networking events and stuff, where people aren't worried about telling you the real secrets.
We tell the truth here.
Well, I explained to him, it was like, man, look, if you're competing against your boss or somebody else who's going after that property, and the owner is saying, I want $400,000 for it because they have an emotional connection to the property, they believe it's worth more than it is. Beautiful. I love that seller. That's my favorite seller. I'm going to that seller, I'm going to say, okay, you think this thing is worth, when it's all fixed up, $500,000 when we're done, right? Oh yeah, of course, it's maybe 60. They're over the moon that you now are believing them. Hey, look, Sell it to me for $3 today. Let's make a deal. I'm going to go and invest 50 grand of my own money into this thing. So now I'm in it for $350. If I sell this thing for a penny over 500, 525, whatever, pick the number, do the math, I'll split it with you.
Got it.
You just got to give me the time, right? So we'll work out a deal. I'm going to hook you up once. I'll do the hard part. I'm going to fix your property. We're going to sell it, and you're going to become a partner of mine. We're going to put this thing out there together and capture it. I'm selling my house to that guy.
Right.
Because if I try to go put it on the market, oh, well, the stove doesn't work. Yeah. The heat's the conventional buyer's gone, right? So you have to sell it to an investor.
Exactly.
And now you're working with somebody who just said, hey, I'm gonna hook you up because I believe in this thing that you're emotionally attached to, versus the guy who maybe he even bids a little bit higher, but says see you later. And now, oh well, that guy's gonna go make $100 grand off my property, and that's my money, and I should get it. Yeah, why not?
Right.
Get them on your team.
So in other words, what Luke is teaching us is more of a creative strategy.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
it's not normal, but it's remember we always talk about thinking outside the box and really running to what other people run from, and so that that offer gets you accepted versus something that doesn't get accepted because now not only they're capturing a lot more upside based off of as opposed to being a regular fix and flip, and so that's good stuff.
Yeah, you're just looking for opportunity. That's you can try to find stuff on market. You can talk to everybody in town, whatever your strategy might be, but you'll get a part of it from all of those avenues, and then it's on you to uncover the rest. So okay, now what do I have to do? I know he's super passionate. He thinks his house worth 500.
Right.
Help him sell me on making it worth 500, and then let's make a deal. Maybe there's another example. I'm sure there's a million of them, but you figure out where somebody is willing to budge or what their need is. Oh, I have to sell this thing in 2 months because we're moving my aunt to assisted living and we need the extra cash, or what, and I don't have time to put it on the market and stage it and clean it out and this, that, or the other thing. I need somebody who's just going to come buy it sight unseen. I don't want people doing showings. I don't want that. Hey, I got you. Here's my number.
Right.
And that's how you start getting into these deals.
Exactly.
Where you're making money, because to pull it all back full circle, when you bring it to me, I want to see that you're making money on the deal.
Correct.
And if you're going to MLS and offering somebody $50,000 over the list price to go buy a house in Brockton tomorrow, you're overpaying.
Yeah.
And I don't want to touch that. Most likely, maybe I could be wrong. So I don't want to step on my toe there, but that's more likely than not. If you're over ask on market in today's environment, you're not getting it done.
Money. Well, and I think when you said the numbers of that young man in North Carolina, and you said 400,000, I was like, ooh, he's going to lose money, because I think a lot of times as new investors, we don't think about, sometimes old investors, because sometimes you get overzealous and you begin to say, well, I can do this and I can do that, and it's like, no, we've talked about in this class, the numbers are the numbers, and you're always extremely conservative with your ARVs and your after repair values, and because you just, the market can shift on you at any moment, and then you start getting into things. New construction is a little bit different because sometimes, then even things pop up there, but with a regular fix and flip, you start opening up doors and walls, man, who knows what you're going to find, So now, flip the wheel on, we thought that our electrical number was going to be $4,000. It turned to be, what was it, 15,000, 16, whatever. It wasn't 4. You're like, but we are padded for it. But you just never know, and so it is good to have someone like Luke to bounce numbers off of and say, hey, Luke, this is what I'm thinking about. These are the numbers. My first deal years ago, it was a 3-1 in Hyde Park for $275, which I wish you can get it for $275 now, but that was back then. That was high, and so I think we figured the ARV would be $400,000 when it was done, and we were going to put about 50 in it. And I was like, oh, I'll make money on it. And the lady was like, no, you're not. She was like, you're not going to make money because this was going to be our first flip. So I didn't know anything about, like you said, taxes, insurance, all the other things that come along with it. But that came over time of me analyzing deals enough for those to say, yeah. So when you said, how much is it going to be worth other than $400,000? How much you getting it for? And you got a gap of 100. That $100,000 gets eaten up class quickly. Commissions and all the things that you got, taxes. It just goes quickly. So
have you ever gotten into the 30% rule? Is that something that you teach?
Talk about
a lender tool that's common for that that first 2-minute underwrite of a deal. So somebody calls me up and says, hey, here are my numbers, this is what I'm doing. One of the first things I'm gonna do is take their cost basis, so their purchase price plus what they're telling me their renovation is, and I'm gonna divide that against what they're telling me they're gonna sell it for. The purchase and the construction.
Okay.
So that's gonna create what we'll call the total cost basis for this example.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna divide that number against what they're selling or projecting to sell the house for.
Okay.
So in this example, with the $300,000 cost basis and the $400,000 exit, if you do that math, comes out to 75. So 0.75, which would give you a 25% gross margin number to start your deal with.
Got it.
Now, in some circumstances, 25 is just fine.
Right.
If you're not borrowing money to do the project, or maybe you're doing the project in 2 or 3 months, maybe you're getting a great deal because your lender's hooking you up on points or doing whatever. 25 isn't the oh no number, but anything, when you do that calculation, if that number is over a 7, over a 0.70, that's when you want to double check. Hey, hold on a second. Okay. Do I have, am I over budgeting for my costs, or am I, being a little too conservative, thinking I'm only going to sell it at 400,000?
Okay.
Where could you, not trying to force your underwriting to make the deal work, but that should shoot off a flag. Because that margin gets eaten up quickly. That 25 or 30% gross margin disappears with the realtor fees, with the taxes, the insurance, the interest carry, everything else that's involved. If you start at 30, you might end at 12 or 15, and that's a good project, no doubt. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you start at 20 and you end at 2, that's not good, because the ones that get thinner eat away a lot faster too, because then you're throwing in, oh, well, I got the extension fee. Well, I was late on a couple payments. I couldn't close it before the end of the loan, so I had to pay a month of default or whatever. I didn't have the money to get this done, and now it's like that last 5%. If you start scraping down to that part of the barrel, that goes like
quickly.
that.
Questions out there?
Hopefully not for me.
That is for you. You're the guest.
I already shot all the bullets. I got nothing left.
So first, you just mentioned about the 30% rule. That's almost the same as saying, for instance, I might look at the ARV of a property, and I might say I want to be at least 20% profit. Is that kind of like the same?
Yeah, similar to it, right?
Saying 30% instead of 20.
I'm using 30 because I'm trying to calculate in for some additional costs that we're not accounting for in your cost basis. So you might say 20, but you might also be, when you're putting your numbers together, already paying attention to what your interest cost might be or what your realtor fees are. So I use that example because it's the most simplified version of it. I'm doing that when I'm having a quick conversation. I'm on speakerphone trying to get the bottle made for my kid or doing what I was doing something. Wait, I can do most of that math in my head now, and I'm saying, okay, that's a 65. So this guy's starting at great 35% margins. I really like he's got something. Let's keep talking. Or if it comes back in that quick gut check, so wait a second, I'm coming in at 90. So you have a 10% margin. My first thought, if I'm that high, wait a second, I missed something. So hold on. Hey, there's 2 townhouses. So you're selling them for 400 each. So it's 800, but the cost basis is the same. So now you're back to 60, and this is great. We have a 40% margin. It's an awesome deal, and I might just quickly
let's go.
Yeah. So you can double check yourself when those numbers come in. It's not the rule of final authority. It's that gut check of like, hey, does this number start to make sense before I then go in and plug in, okay, I'm estimating my interest is here. I think it's going to take me 6 months. I know I'm going to pay 2 points. I'm going to pay the insurance guy this, the title guy that, and then you start, really dotting the I's and crossing the T's and see where you land.
Okay. And then the other one was about what you talked about as far as I'm facing a situation right now as far as a person, they're kind of adamant. Actually, I talked to you about this property the other day at Medway. The woman is adamant that she wants $500,000, and based on ARVs in the area, I'm at $400,000. And I was just thinking about something like what you were talking about as far as, okay, if you want to, how would that really play out? Like if I was to do something like what you're saying, I give you $400,000, and if it's over a certain number, I'll split it with you. Now, what number would that be? Would that be the 5, or would that be more than?
Yeah, it depends on where you think that the value is at the end and what you're qualifying your work to be worth, right? Because you're going to have to go in there and renovate the property.
Yeah.
So
I'm thinking that the house will sell for 6 at the end.
And that person says that they think it's worth 5 now. So
they want 5
I would
now.
be trying to have that conversation. You want to start to get them to think like an investor a little bit and have that conversation with them and say, hey, look, let's say the seller's name is Jan. Hey, Jan, I need to make money on this, right? You understand that I'm an investor. I'm not buying this for myself. I'm not living in it. I'm going to fix this place up and put it back on the market. And that's going to cost me money. I have to borrow money from a loan. I got to pay contractors. I got to buy material. I got to do all this stuff. So once I'm done doing all that stuff, Jan, if I spend $100,000 doing that and now the house is worth 500, I won't make any money. I just lost money because I spent $100,000 from 4 to 5, and then all the money it cost me to do it. So I'd need the house to sell for 700 or what, pick the number. Maybe you only need 40,000 for the renovation, and now I need the house to sell for 600. Do you think that I could do it for 6? Does that make sense? And she's like, yeah. I bet you would sell it for 6.5. Or like you start getting them to be on your team and supporting that ARV number. So if they believe in the value of the property, and you're saying, yeah, I need to buy it a little bit under what its market value is today because that's going to allow me to invest in it and make it worth even more at the end. That's where you figure out what your number is that you're comfortable with, and you say, okay, if I sell it at 6. I'm pumped. I know that I'm making what I need to make for it to be worth it for me to do it, and I'm willing to give up some upside on top of that. So hey, Jan, for anything over 600, I'm going to give you half, or I'm going to give you an extra 10 grand, or whatever. You figure out what that important number is for them, but you can't get there until you get them to see it how you're seeing it, because they'll never be able to rationalize that deal if they don't get that you're doing it for a business venture, that you're going in and you're taking advantage of them, buying it for under market, and that's why you're making all your money. It's worth what you're willing to pay for. Otherwise, why not put it on the market or sell it to somebody else for 500? She's talking to you for a reason, right? Like, otherwise,
and
you
that
have a
is
deal.
that's a sticking point with her and a lot of other sellers, because they, why can't a young couple come in and she could live downstairs and they could fix it up? As time goes, I'm like, a bank's not going to finance it.
Yeah.
You need somebody like me that's going to come in and pay cash. I'm trying to get her to see that, like what you're saying.
Yeah, try to get her on her team. If that's what's important to her, right? That's for the first place where my mind goes to is what's important to this seller. What do they care about? Is it okay? They want to see that a young family comes in. Hey, do you have any realtor friends in the market? Anybody that when this thing is done, would be interested in it? Maybe you offer to hire that realtor to market the property after. Somebody that hey, this is a great neighborhood. I want to make sure this goes to a good family who's going to come in and live here once you're done renovating it. I don't know how else you can control that one. I don't have the perfect answer for that, but I would think maybe find a broker or a realtor that they like and say, hey, I'll sign a listing agreement for them on the back, and then now it's your friend who's going to help me sell this at the end of it. They're going to make some money too, or whatever.
I think she's just trying to justify somebody, if a regular buyer was able to buy that house from a bank at 6% interest or 7% interest with a 30-year loan, they could probably pay $500,000 for it. But they're not going to get that type of financing from a bank.
And they have to want to do it, right? Not every look at the world today. There's fewer and fewer tradesmen and women in the country every day. There's less people that want to go work in HVAC or plumbing and do it, swing any hammers. It took, I don't know, 6 or 7 years for me to figure out what side hit the nail. And that's there's a lot of people that aren't going to get into that.
That's where we are right now. I'm trying to negotiate, trying to get her mind, like you said, looking at it from an investor point of view.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple other ways you can do it too. That all really depends on what your relationship is with that seller and how comfortable they are with you. Because you might even be able to say, hey, what do you owe on the house? Is it, I'm buying it from you for 400, but you only owe 2. Let's partner together. And now you come in and hey, we'll split all the profit, or we'll split 70-30. You do a different exchange. So let me come in here. I'll renovate this thing. I'm not going to do it unless I'm on paper as an owner with you. So we're going to spin up an LLC. We're going to open up a venture on this property together. Do the work. I'll come in, be responsible, do the construction, and then once we sell it, here's what you're going to get. Here's what I'm going to get. And you want that bigger number, you're going to wait 7 months, 8 months, a year until I'm done the renovation and this thing is sold. But that's how you're going to get
the number
your your number if you want it, if you're sticking to your guns for that.
Nice.
But, figure out what the motivation is. Usually it's money. It's
I mean that particular.
How much or how fast.
That particular property is free and clear. She owns it free and clear.
Oh, okay.
They actually left it vacant for years. They live down the Cape somewhere, and she's just tired of paying to have no taxes, insurance,
The upkeep.
lawn mowed. She pays the neighbors to watch it, so she's just getting tired of it.
That's a perfect partner with me situation. Let me use the value of this property to get a loan for the construction. You're gonna get. I'm gonna pay you interest for the value of the property that we're agreeing on now, and then once this thing sells, if I sell it for $500,000, I'll give you an extra $20,000. Yeah. I'll give you $425 instead of $400. Nice. How about that? And now you just got a way cheaper loan, right? Because you don't need any money to buy the property. You're only borrowing the construction fund, so your carry just got cut and probably to a third of what it would have been. Your transactional cost will remain the same for the most part. Title insurance, property insurance, that stuff. You'll still have to pay the nickel and dime stuff there, but the cost to do that deal will be, oh gosh, pennies compared to what it would be if you bought it for $400,000. So if you talk through them in that regard, then it's worth it to give up a little more because you're spending way less to do the deal. Yeah.
And then we have Victor has a question online from it's going back to something you talked about already, but just what you have to bring to the table. So he was asking, other than credit score and obviously the down payment, is there any other financial, like liquidity of your own, how liquid are you personally? Is that part of the
compensating factors?
Yeah, so
exactly.
that if you want it to be, it can be, right? Okay. So if you're somebody who does have that and you're trying to say, hey, I don't have a ton of experience, but I got a ton of money in the bank. Okay, yeah, you can show me.
You're right.
For us, our product at H1H2, we're not asking for your bank statements. I'm not asking to see your investments accounts or any of that stuff. So some lenders do. I can't speak for everybody in the market. If you're doing, let's say, under $10 million in loans with us actively, out on active loans, if you're under 10 million, we're really not asking you for a whole lot of additional information outside of, I'm going to do a soft credit check, doesn't even impact your score. I'm going to do the soft check. I'm going to tell you what we can offer you on the project, and if you show up on closing day with the money, then great. You showed up on closing day with the money, and we closed. You had to bring your 10% down and whatever your third-party closing fees are, the tax, the title, insurance, that stuff. That's all in addition to the 10% down, right? So you have your down payment for the purchase price of the property.
Correct.
So you're buying the house for $100,000. I say, hey, you need to bring 10% down. So you're bringing your $10,000. So your closing costs are your $10,000 for the down payment, whatever your closing costs are for your taxes, your title, insurance, or whatever, all the the extra stuff. That number all gets combined in, and maybe you're showing up to the closing table with 13,000 just for in this example. But is that did that answer Victor's question? I hope that.
I believe that it did. Absolutely. Yeah. And then I think another question that's on is basically, as you enter into this, as you closed, from a draw perspective, how does it work? How does the whole transaction work throughout the project?
Yeah, so again, common with most lenders, definitely with H1H2, but I can't speak for all of them. We do draws in arrears, which basically means you do the work and then we reimburse you for it after it's done. So before we close on the loan, we agree to a construction budget. So you might say, hey, Luke, here's my budget for $100,000 of construction. I need $20,000 for foundation, $20,000 for framing, and $25,000 for finishes or whatever. And you go and start the project. Okay, the foundation's in, and you say, hey, I need my $20,000 from that budget that we agreed on. Awesome. I need to verify that that foundation is in fact in. We have two options. Our first and most popular is we send you a link to a smartphone. Pops up on your phone, you take a couple pictures, and usually within 90 minutes in most cases, if it's pretty straightforward, simple deal, the money's in your account and off you go. If it's a little bit more complicated, or maybe it's a multiple unit building, or there's a lot of moving parts, or you're worried that you're not going to get all the right photos in, and you don't want to trust the technology, cool, we'll send somebody out, and they'll do we call them the snail mail inspection, the old school guy. You're going to get Jimmy and his rusted out Toyota Camry and his iPhone 6, his Yeah, he's going to do the same thing that we were going to have you do. It's just going to take him a couple extra days.
I've been there.
He'll ask a few more questions. But sometimes those guys can be great. So I joke. I don't want to knock them.
No.
Sometimes they can really help you out because they get out there and they'll say, "Oh, hey man, you didn't ask for any of your your roofing stuff, but you got half the shingles up, the trusses are all there. Like you got half a roof. I can give you half your roof line. Do you want it?
Right.
And then you might say, oh yeah, I wasn't expecting the framers to get that done by the time you were here. So now that you did, great, let's add that in. So you get a little bit of benefit from having somebody physically on site that just another set of eyes. So
correct.
People go both ways. I'd say it's 90-10 though. 90% of the people like to do the
technology.
App, and then there you got 10% that are either doing a project that's so complicated that you can't do it on the app, or like I said, you have multiple condos, it's a new construction, and you got 3 structures on one lot, and which one's it gets too messy with trying to do it on the phone. Then we get physical eyeballs out. But
I mean, do you guys? This is just for my question because I've had people pay vendors directly for me. Do you guys do that at all?
We don't do any direct pay to vendors yet. We've talked about it. We've consulted with a few different local vendors and material distribution companies, and most of them, I don't want to say find it as like a competitive piece to it, but the pushback has been, well, that's how I run my business, Luke. I'm a secondary credit lender in the material industry. So they are relying on a lot of these builders and house flippers to go in and have a credit app done with, let's say, the lumber yard that you're buying your material package from. So they come in and say, yeah, man, like I'm selling them the material on credit. And a lot of them, I think, if they pay within 10 days, they either get a discount or there's no interest or there's no nothing. But they're making a profit off of the buyer actually buying from them. So they want you to use that. And then that, to me, also knowing that and having some experience in that industry a little bit, especially on a larger project, gives me a little pause when somebody says, hey, Luke, can you direct pay National Lumber for me on this next deal? What's the matter? Credit limit? Can't get anything from them anymore? You didn't pay them? They leaned another property? Why can't you go all of a sudden that you've built all these houses and all these lumber yards that you've been working with used to let you borrow the material until you got the draw and then you'd pay them for it? They're not letting you, so that usually on a bigger scale operation, that's another spot I'm going to stop and ask them questions. Say, hey man, hold on a second.
What's going
on? I don't know all of them, but I know a lot of them. I'll call them up. We're local business owners. We're friends. For most of these shops, hey man, do you know Timmy down on Main Street? Is he giving you any trouble on some other property? Oh yeah, he hasn't paid us in 6 months, and he's So hey, I'm not trying to go put good money behind bad money.
Of course not.
So that's the reality is you can get away with fooling people for a little while, but not forever.
It catches up with you.
Especially in here locally, it's a small market. A lot of the players know each other in town.
Wow, that's good. I never thought about.
Try not to be too sharp.
No. well, I mean that's why we do what we do, right? We have people come in who have the expertise in some areas that we don't have, and I'm quite sure some of you guys get some nuggets, and people out there get nuggets as well. But I never thought of, because I've had a couple lenders just pay. I was like, hey, pay my roofer for me directly. But these are on a small scale. You're talking about more on a bigger scale, where
you've seen it in both, right? And I think as an investor, you're shortchanging yourself a little bit if you take that strategy. Maybe this is a hot take, but with some grace, not to be deliberately abused. But when you put a budget together, you have an opportunity to create the roadmap for your project. So when you say, hey, I've got a roofing budget, when you first give me that roofing budget, it's going to be about 30. And if you're smart, you're going to make sure that it's not actually 30. It's going to be 26. So now if I go pay your roofer directly and your budget was 30.
You've overpaid them.
I'm either I'm either giving the roofer what the invoice was, that was 26, and you're not getting that extra $4,000. Or I'm paying your roofer an extra $4,000 and you didn't save any money on that thing. So if you go in and say, hey, Luke, I'm done my roof. I only paid $26,000 for it. I'd like to use that other $4,000 for landscaping. Can I move it over here? I'd like to. Hey, I overspent on my windows. I broke a bunch and they're not giving me a break. So a delivery guy blamed it on my site guy, this, that, or whatever. And don't worry about it. I got the extra money in the budget. We'll take care of it. So if you're overly reliant on some of that stuff, I think you're leaving some opportunity on the table for you to have a little bit of your own discretionary flexibility throughout the course of a project. And generally, the people that ask for that luxury are the people doing the bigger projects, and they have the project manager managing 3 or 4 different deals, and they don't want to deal with it. And they're looking for that convenience of it. And that's what pulls me back to that red flag of like, wait a second, like, why would they be willing to pay more for this product if they could just get it for what they've already got set up somewhere else? I would recommend, rule of thumb wise, 10 to 15% of your construction budget you should have liquid to start a project. If you have that amount set aside outside of your down payment money, so when you're putting all your figures together to say, hey, I need $50,000 to get into a deal if I'm buying something like this, and 25 of that is for your down payment, you get another 5 of it for closing costs, and now you've got, leaves us with 20 grand left of operational capital, what we'll call that, and that's going to help you service your debt payments. That's going to let you get into your into your construction draw process. So if you have that money, you can put the deposits down. You're telling your subs, yep, go ahead, get started. We'll pay you when it's done, but here's the money to go. That's going to let you get into it with enough velocity to start catching up into your draws. Because you start getting some of those bigger items in, that's where you can really start to recushion yourself as you go through that process.
Now, interest reserve at all?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep. So interest reserves for us, we'll put them on larger projects. If this is a basic max leverage fix and flip loan, like we were talking about earlier, that product where if you're buying something and your renovation budget is 20% or less of the purchase price, and you're staying inside of the walls, so that $100,000 purchase, $20,000 reno, I'm going to give you a 10% down, 100% of construction, maxed out loan on that thing, and you're not getting an interest reserve. That's probably a project you're moving out of pretty quickly. So you shouldn't need to pay for an interest reserve in that setup. You should be able to fund those payments on your own. And the thing about the interest reserve that lenders don't like to talk about, but it's true.
Explain what an interest reserve, do y'all know what an interest reserve is? Well, Keith does, everybody else doesn't. Explain what the interest reserve is.
Yeah, so the interest reserve is an additional part of your loan that some lenders will offer that's used to pay for your interest payments for you. So they'll say, hey, I'm going to give you 90% of your purchase price, 100% of your construction budget, and I'm going to give you another pile of money over here, and it's usually going to be way more than what you need to service the debt for the loan. So they're increasing your loan size. So when you do that, you're paying your origination fee, the points on the loan, across that whole number. That stinks, but that's not the end of the world. The part that really stinks, especially on a larger project or when that sum is big, let's say that's a $50,000 interest reserve, that money is sent at closing into an escrow account. So it is dispersed on day one, which means it accrues interest. So you are now paying interest on money that is being used to pay your interest that just accrues more interest as you use it throughout the life of the loan. So they call it paying juice on juice. As a convenience factor, it's fantastic. On a large project, you got a bunch of stuff going on. The project can afford it and it pays for it. It's no big deal. When you're doing a huge new construction project or you got a massive condo conversion and these deals have so much margin in it, no problem. Easy for the deal to pay for it. The deal is so strong it covers the cost of that, and I'm okay with the convenience. That's when I'll do it. I'll say, great, I'm in. Makes sense. Everybody's easy.
And interest reserve only should work if it doesn't have cushion in it.
Correct.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's not something that we've done both. So we've done, we've done loans where we made payments, and we've done some where we had interest reserve, but it was only done because it was a juicy deal. So yeah, we'll do interest reserve, and I needed it at the time, and so. But I just think that as you're dealing with your lender, having these conversations are critical. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, you have to know what the expectation is, right? You can't go into a deal thinking you're going to have one and then find out at the closing day that, no, you don't have an interest reserve. You got to make an interest payment at closing, and your next one's due on the 1st. and
a couple days.
Whoa, wait a second, hold on.
I wasn't expecting that.
So it's important to know, right? But so for us, big projects. So when you're into that heavy reno section where maybe you're doing 50, 60 and north percentage of what you're buying the house for, or you're doing a true new construction or a tear down, that's when we would go and say, hey, we're willing to offer you an interest reserve.
Got it. Okay.
And that's where generally for where we will max that out is at about 5% of the cost basis.
Okay.
So if you have, a 85 loan to cost deal on a new construction product with us, we would increase it to 90 if you wanted an interest reserve.
Got it. All right. Lucas gave you guys a whole bunch of stuff, didn't he? Yes. Got your head on tilt like this. Well, Luke, look into that camera and let them know what's the best way to get in contact with you. So is it email or it could be social media? You can tell them exactly how to do that.
Yeah, fastest way to reach out to us so we can make sure you get to the right person is either H1H2 Capital on Instagram,
okay,
or myself, Luke Hanscom, at Instagram or at Luke Hanscom. H1H2 Capital's Instagram page or website, you will find all of our information.
Right.
We have a phenomenal VP of sales, Brian Delario, who's he's our North Shore guy because I got tired of driving up there. But we've got a couple of great staff members that are jumping, at every opportunity we can to come and help you.
Leah?
Lee's in the office. She's helping process and close to make sure you have a smooth experience once your deal's ready.
Good.
Yeah,
she's nice. I like her.
Yeah, we've got a really good hands-on team to make sure that nothing gets missed in your process, and we help get you to the finish line.
Right. All right. Well, Luke, I appreciate you, sir. This concludes. What's today? We're June. Oh my God. June. What's today, y'all? 10th. June 10th edition of Let's Talk Real. You guys been around me loving. I'm like dates go all over the place. But thank you guys for tuning in. Next month, guess we don't have as of yet. But please do me a favor, share this episode with everyone in your sphere of influence who's looking to be a real estate investor. Obviously, Luke is a resource now, so if you need to have a discussion around private lending, hard money lending, he's the man to go to. And so until next week, let's talk real estate. Dexter B. Jenkins. We'll see you in July. Be blessed. Good night.